Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing another movie review for you all. This movie is a crime drama from India, Hindi language English subs, released in the year 2024, directed by Aditya Dimborkar, and this film is called Sector 36. So Sector 36 is inspired by a true story of a prolific serial killer in India that targeted children in a very poor area. So in this film we have Sector 36, which is located in a slum. All these people are forgotten about because they're poor, and there are numerous children that have gone missing. So the police officer that has received these reports, he doesn't think anything of it because he's very busy. He just wants to push it aside. He just wants to say these children are going to come back, they've just run away, nothing to worry about. But then when something happens to him, it makes it personal. And now he's going to investigate these disappearances seriously, and he uncovers a sinister pattern that indicates that maybe there is actually someone taking these kids. And so as he investigates, not only does he have to contend with the evil that is lurking in this Sector 36, he also has to contend with police corruption that threatens to not only take his job, but also his life. And so what happens at that point on? Something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Sector 36. For those of you that have been following my channel, you realise that I don't really review a lot of Indian cinema. Now when it comes to Indian cinema, I associate it with Bollywood, singing, music, dancing, not my cup of tea. Nothing against the country, I love the country of India, I love the food, I love the fact that they're so passionate about cricket, and I love the culture. But when it comes to the film industry, I'm just not a massive fan, and so that's the reason why I don't review many Indian movies. But every now and then, an Indian film will come along that really grabs my interest, and Sector 36 was definitely that type of film. This is a movie that is loosely based on a real-life serial killer that targeted children, so the themes of this film are actually really, really hard to take, and it's really hard to watch. And so I thought, alright, well, this is a movie that's going to test my limits, test my endurance, and I was hoping that it was as good as a lot of people were saying it was. And after watching Sector 36, I would probably say that this is probably the best Indian film that I've actually seen. So as I said, my experience with Indian cinema is limited, but from the movies that I've watched, Sector 36 really hit me the hardest. As being a father, a recent father for the first time, I actually thought this movie had much more of an impact because of what was going on. But not only because of the fact I'm a father, but also the fact, the attitudes of the upper class sort of world. When it comes to the poor class, but basically just dismissing them, it doesn't really matter. And so I thought that was what was really confronting in this film. I just thought as though the way that these police officers were treating the slums, I thought it was almost like they weren't human, it didn't matter. But then when it actually happens to them, this is where it actually is taken seriously. And this isn't an attitude of the world. Basically that self-centered attitude where unless it's happening to you, it doesn't matter. So recently in the news we had this celebrity that had been received online bullying. And it was only then she stood up for online bullying, and she said that she stands against it. She was going to invest a lot of money in order to combat bullying. But then I said to myself, where were you before this happened? That you ignored this. This was something that wasn't on the radar until it happened to you. And so that's that self-centered sort of attitude of these celebrities, where if it's not happening to them, it doesn't matter. And so it's only until it happens to you, this is where it actually starts to be taken seriously. And this is something that happens to this police officer that was absolutely fantastic as far as a character is concerned. It was very sympathetic, very likeable, but that attitude of being that self-centered individual and basically living inside your own bubble, I thought was actually a disturbing look at how society actually is. And so if it's not happening to you, it doesn't matter, and that's the attitude that this film has. And I just thought as though it was tragic because these children were going missing. Why wasn't this investigated? But unfortunately, as I said, it just went under the radar. And so it's not until this man is actually thrown into this situation personally where he actually takes it seriously. And this is the different side of this character. At the start of the film, the main character was really arrogant, but then as the movie goes along, you start to see that he is a very caring individual. And so I thought, alright, well, it's taken a personal sort of matter to actually get you an insight into who this person really is. So I thought that was really, really well done. The movie is very disturbing, so be very careful of that. I really like the idea, the way that it didn't exploit the material. Now this is a film about children being victim of a serial killer, and it could have easily gone down the exploitation route just to be shocking for the sake of it. But this movie wants to tell a story, and I thought for the most part the story is actually really, really well told. I thought the cinematography is very dreary and bleak. It's a very, very depressing film. I thought the soundtrack was second to none. One of the best soundtracks that I've actually heard in a film because it's a character of its own. It's a really chilling soundtrack. and it just helps emphasize that sense of horror, that sense of atmosphere, that this is a situation that you don't want to be part of, but you can't help but be captivated because you're captured by everything that's going on. And so the investigation I thought was incredibly riveting. I was actually interested from start to finish, which is a good thing because it goes for over 2 hours, but I never felt as though I felt that runtime. I always felt as though I was invested in the story and I wanted to see how this was going to unfold. And the movie doesn't promise a happy ending, and so I always felt as though this was going to be had a devastating sort of impact at the end. And so the movie has a really consistent tone. It knows exactly what it wants to be, and I thought also it was very respectful to the story that it was loosely based on. So the acting performances, as I said, for the main character, are absolutely fantastic. You have the suspected serial killer that I actually thought was fairly decent, and there are some scenes in this film, especially an interrogation scene, that was incredibly unnerving. And there was also another interaction with dialogue that I thought, again, was just really, really creepy. And so it's really well written, it's really well acted, and there are some scenes that will really, really stick with you. So I liked the fact that this movie had so much more than just being a horror film. It actually wanted to give you a message about attitudes and how we live in our own little bubble. And once that bubble is burst, we see the outside picture, and all of a sudden things have become really, really catastrophic. And so the whole film has that catastrophic sort of feel to it. I really like the idea of the corruption within the police force. Is corruption that not only is not only related to the Indian police force, but it's the police force all around. And I've always said to my friends, the only difference between corruption in the third world countries and the corruption in the first world countries hide it better. And so that's something that is a universal problem. The people that we are employed to protect us, when they are not, the saints that we want them to be, this is where we start to feel a certain sense of loneliness. And so the movie has that sense of loneliness, and basically you're left to fend for yourself. And so I thought that was really, really well done. The whole film just doesn't really have a good guy versus bad guy. It's basically who is the least worst. And I thought that was really well done. And I thought the ending was phenomenal. I really, really liked the way that this film finished. So that was great. If I have issues with this movie, I will say that some of it felt a little bit forced. I didn't really like the actor who played the serial killer, the suspected serial killer. Now, I know that actor is actually very famous in India, but I never felt as though he was a genuine threat. I always felt as though he was acting the part. And so he doesn't do a bad job. I just felt as though it needed a different actor, because this guy, I just thought as though I'm not really buying it. And so that was a little bit of a problem I had with the film. And also there were other moments where I felt as though it was a bit forced, that it was a bit convenient for the way the plot goes forward. The movie didn't want to have the patience to really drag through these certain elements that I'm not going to give away. But when you see the film, you'll know what I mean. Sometimes, there is a confession, for example, and the confession seems to come through very easily. And I thought to myself, well, that was a little bit silly, and it's clear that the film wants to keep progressing. It doesn't want to get stuck in actually unfolding that confession in a very realistic way. And so that was, again, a little problem I had. I noticed that there were some moments that I felt a little bit lazy, but pushing that aside, it's still an incredibly disturbing movie that does border on horror. It's one of the best Indian films that I have seen. So if it sounds like your cup of tea, go in there and watch it, but be very careful. It has very, very distressing themes, but thankfully it doesn't exploit those distressing themes, which makes it even more high impact. And so if it sounds like you think, go out there and see it, I'm going to give Sector 36 4 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.